Mother Agatha. Is that you? Forgive us, Lord.
Come back down, you left us there.
There are places where prayers go unanswered, where God's silence becomes something worse than absence, becomes presence of something else entirely. In the mist-shrouded hills of northern Pennsylvania, where autumn fog clings to stone walls like burial shrouds, there stands a convent that should not exist. St. Mary's of the Sorrows. Abandoned since 1959. Empty since the night 37 nuns vanished without trace, without explanation, without sound. The building remains intact. The chapel still stands. The dormitories wait in silent rows. But the nuns? They're gone, erased from the world as if they never existed. No bodies were found, no signs of struggle, no indication of flight. The doors were locked from the inside, the windows unbroken, the gates chained. Yet somehow, between evening vespers and morning lauds, 37 women disappeared from a locked building. The official investigation found nothing. The church's inquiry concluded nothing. The local police gave up after 6 months. But the building knows. The stones remember. And on certain nights, when the fog rolls thick and the moon hides its face, you can still hear them. The nuns, singing their evening prayers, chanting in Latin, crying out in terror as something claims them one by one. St. Mary's of the Sorrows stands empty but not abandoned. The nuns never left. They're still there, still praying, still screaming, still vanishing, over and over, trapped in an endless loop of horror that began in 1959 and has never ended. Do not enter after dark. Do not answer if you hear singing, because the vanished nuns are still looking for someone to join their eternal devotion. St. Mary's of the Sorrows was established in 1887 by the Sisters of Perpetual Mercy, a strict contemplative order dedicated to prayer, silence, and service. The convent sat isolated on 200 acres of Pennsylvania woodland, surrounded by stone walls 8 feet high. The nuns rarely left the grounds. Contact with the outside world was minimal. A delivery truck once a week, a priest for Sunday Mass, and little else. The order attracted women seeking escape from the world. Some came running from tragedy. Others sought spiritual communion in its purest form. By 1959, 37 nuns lived at St. Mary's, ranging in age from 19 to 73. They lived by the rule, rising at 3 a.m. for prayers, working in silence, taking meals without speaking, retiring at 8 p.m. Their days were structured, predictable, unchanging. Mother Superior Agatha had led the convent for 27 years. She was known for her strictness, her devotion, and her absolute conviction that St. Mary's had been built on holy ground. The land, she claimed, had been blessed by missionaries in the 1600s. The Native Americans had considered it sacred. "We are guardians of a sanctified place," she would tell novices. "Our prayers keep darkness at bay. Our devotion seals evil in the earth. We must never falter, never stop praying, because if we do, something will break free." The older nuns understood what Mother Agatha meant. They spoke in whispers about the catacombs beneath the chapel, tunnels that predated the convent, that seemed too precisely carved to be natural. They spoke of sound from below, not quite digging, not quite breathing, but something in between. They spoke of dreams shared among the sisters, dreams of something vast and patient waiting in the deep darkness beneath their feet. But these are just whispers, superstitions, the kind of stories that arise in isolated places where silence breeds imagination. Nothing to fear, nothing to investigate. Just pray harder, work harder, keep to the rule. Everything will be fine. On October 13th, 1959, everything stopped being fine. That evening, The nuns gathered in the chapel for Vespers, as they did every evening. Sister Margaret, who assisted in the kitchen, noted that Mother Agatha seemed troubled. She kept looking at the floor, Margaret later told investigators, at the stone beneath the altar, as if she could see through it, as if something below was looking back. The Vespers proceeded normally. The nuns sang their evening prayers. They filed out of the chapel in silence, moving toward their dormitories. Sister Margaret stayed behind to extinguish the candles. As she worked, she heard Mother Agatha's voice from the chapel entrance. "Sister, come quickly. We're locking down early tonight. Something isn't right." Sister Margaret asked what was wrong. Mother Agatha just shook her head. "The prayers didn't reach heaven tonight. They went somewhere else. We need to seal the doors." Now, that was the last conversation Sister Margaret ever had with Mother Superior Agatha, because Sister Margaret had been called away that evening, an emergency involving her dying mother in Philadelphia. She was the only nun to leave the convent that night, the only one to survive. Sister Margaret left St. Mary's at 7:30 p.m., driven by a local man hired to transport her to the train station. By 8 p.m., the convent was locked down, all doors secured from the inside, all windows latched, the main gate chained and padlocked. 37 nuns remained inside, following their evening routine, preparing for bed, saying private prayers, settling into the profound silence that the rule demanded after dark. At 3 a.m., as every morning, the bells should have rung for vigils, the first prayer service of the day. The bells were silent. In the town of Millbrook, 3 miles away, Father Thomas O'Connor noticed. In 20 years of serving St. Mary's, he'd never known the bells to fail. He waited an hour. Still silence. At 5 a.m., deeply concerned, he drove to the convent. The gates were chained from the inside, as expected. Father O'Connor called out. No response. He climbed the wall, not easy for a man of 60, but fear gave him strength. The convent grounds were still, too still. No movement, no sound, not even birds singing, though dawn was breaking. Just silence. Heavy, oppressive silence that pressed against his ears like hands. Father O'Connor approached the main door. Knocked. Called out. Nothing. He tried the handle. Locked. He moved to windows, peering inside. Everything appeared normal. Beds made. Corridors empty. No signs of disturbance. But where were the nuns? Where were the 37 women who should be awake, praying, beginning their day? Father O'Connor broke a window. Climbed inside. The silence was worse inside the building. Not just absence of sound, but a presence of silence, if that makes sense. A silence so complete it felt alive. Watchful. He searched the dormitories. Empty. The refectory. Empty. The chapel. Empty. Every room, every corridor, every space. Empty. The nuns were gone, but their belongings remained. Rosaries on bedside tables. Habits hanging in wardrobes. Personal prayer books marked with the previous night's readings. Even their shoes were still arranged in neat rows by their beds. It was as if the nuns had simply evaporated, leaving everything behind, leaving no trace of where they'd gone or how they'd left a locked building. Father O'Connor found one anomaly. In the chapel, the stone beneath the altar had been disturbed. Ancient flagstones that had been sealed in place for 70 years were now loose, shifted slightly, revealing a gap, a darkness beneath, an opening into the catacombs that Mother Agatha had always forbidden anyone to explore. And on the altar itself, written in what appeared to be ash, were Latin words, Descenderunt ad infernum viventes. They descended to hell alive. Father O'Connor fled, called the police. Within hours, St. Mary's was swarming with investigators. They searched every inch of the convent, the grounds, the surrounding woods. They brought dogs. The animals refused to enter the chapel, cowering and whining at the threshold. They brought priests to bless the building. The priests reported feeling profound spiritual oppression and recommended the convent be sealed and never opened again. The investigation lasted 6 months. Dozens of theories were proposed. The nuns had fled in the night, somehow escaping without opening doors or gates. They'd been kidnapped by persons unknown. They'd committed mass suicide and their bodies were hidden. They'd staged an elaborate hoax. Every theory failed under scrutiny. The evidence suggested the impossible. 37 women had vanished from inside a locked building, leaving no trace, no clues, no explanation. Sister Margaret was questioned extensively. She told them about Mother Agatha's fear, about the prayers that didn't reach heaven, about the catacombs beneath the chapel and the sound some nuns claimed to hear. The investigators explored the catacombs. They found tunnels extending deep into the hillside, some natural, some clearly man-made. And at the deepest point, they found a chamber. A large, circular chamber with walls covered in symbols. Not Christian symbols, but something older. Something that predated Christianity by millennia. In the center of that chamber, they found something that made them seal the catacombs immediately. They found marks in the stone. 37 distinct indentations, each roughly human-sized, arranged in a circle. As if 37 people had stood there and somehow sunk into solid rock, or been pulled through it. The investigators took photographs, filed reports, and then were told by both the church and the local authorities to stop asking questions. The case was closed, unsolved. The nuns were declared missing. St. Mary's of the Sorrows was abandoned. The convent stood empty for years, deteriorating slowly, claimed by vegetation and weather. But it wasn't truly empty. People who passed by the property reported experiences that suggested something remained. Something that had taken the nuns. Something that was still there. In 1963, a group of teenagers broke into St. Mary's on a dare. They wanted to explore the infamous ghost convent. They made it as far as the chapel before they heard it. Singing, female voices, dozens of them, chanting in Latin. The sound came from beneath the floor, from the sealed catacombs. The teenagers ran, but one of them, a boy named David Holt, claimed he saw something as they fled. In the chapel doorway, he told police later, his voice shaking, there was a woman, a nun. She was standing perfectly still, watching us. But she was wrong. Transparent, maybe? Or made of something that wasn't quite solid. And her mouth was open, like she was screaming, but no sound came out. Then she pointed down, at the floor, at the entrance to the catacombs, like she was trying to warn us, or invite us. The other teenagers confirmed the singing, but only David saw the figure. He became obsessed with St. Mary's after that night, researched the vanishing, collected newspaper clippings, interviewed Sister Margaret. He became convinced that the nuns hadn't left. They'd gone down, into the catacombs, following something, or summoned by something, and they were still down there, trapped, calling for help. In 1967, David Holt returned to St. Mary's alone. He brought rope, flashlights, and a determination to explore the catacombs, to find out what had taken the nuns, to bring answers. His car was found parked outside the gates. His equipment was found at the entrance to the catacombs, carefully arranged, as if he'd set it down intending to return. But David himself was never seen again. He'd become the 38th victim of whatever haunted St. Mary's. The disappearances continued sporadically. A homeless man seeking shelter in 1971. A photographer documenting abandoned buildings in 1978. A pair of paranormal investigators in 1984. All vanished. All last seen entering the convent. All gone without trace. The local police began posting warnings. The church considered demolishing the building, but something always stopped them. Equipment would fail. Workers would refuse to enter. Accidents would happen. It was as if St. Mary's itself resisted destruction, as if something wanted the building to remain standing. Waiting. In 1989, a woman named Catherine Brennan visited St. Mary's. She claimed to be a psychic medium, capable of communicating with the dead. She believed she could contact the vanished nuns, learn what had happened to them. She entered the convent at dusk, carrying recording equipment. She planned to conduct a seance in the chapel, to call out to the spirits, to demand answers. Catherine emerged at dawn, aged 20 years. Her hair had gone completely white. Her face was lined and haggard. She'd been 35 when she entered. She looked 60 when she left, and she would say nothing about what she'd experienced. Nothing except they're still there. All of them. Still praying. Still trying to hold it back. But it's too strong. It's always been too strong. They're not dead. They're not alive. They're in between. Trapped in the moment of transition. Frozen between one world and the next. It's feeding on them. Has been feeding on them for 30 years. Catherine Brennan never worked as a medium again. She moved to Alaska, as far from Pennsylvania as possible. In her final interview before disappearing from public life, she said, "Don't go to St. Mary's. Don't try to help them. You can't. They're beyond help, beyond rescue. They made a choice, sacrificed themselves to seal something away. And if you disturb that sacrifice, if you break what they're holding closed, it will escape. And God help us all if that happens." The encounters at St. Mary's intensified in the 1990s, as if whatever haunted the convent was growing stronger, becoming more active, reaching out beyond the stone walls to affect the surrounding area. Residents of Millbrook reported disturbances, nightmares shared among multiple people, dreams of nuns singing in darkness, dreams of descending into endless tunnels, dreams of something vast and hungry waiting at the bottom. In 1994, a film crew received permission to document St. Mary's for a television special on American mysteries. They arrived with cameras, sound equipment, and a healthy skepticism about ghost stories. They planned to film during the day, get some atmospheric shots, interview locals. No overnight stays. No seances, just documentation. But as they filmed inside the chapel, something happened. The temperature dropped. Their breath misted. And then they heard it, all of them simultaneously, the sound of singing. Female voices, Latin prayers, coming from beneath their feet. The sound engineer checked his equipment. The audio was being recorded. This wasn't hallucination. This was real sound, captured on multiple devices. The crew followed the sound to the sealed entrance of the catacombs. The seal had been broken. Recently, the stones that had blocked the entrance were pushed aside, displaced from within, as if something had opened the passage from below. The crew stood at the threshold, cameras running, listening to the singing grow louder. Closer, then a figure appeared in the darkness. A nun, walking slowly up the tunnel toward them. She was real, solid, visible, undeniably present. She wore the traditional habit of the Sisters of Perpetual Mercy. Her face was pale, serene. She walked with purpose. And as she approached the threshold, as she stepped into the chapel, she looked directly at the camera and spoke. "We are still here," she said in a voice that echoed strangely, as if spoken from a great distance. "We have always been here. We hold the seal. We maintain the vigil. But we grow weak. It grows strong. Soon, the seal will break. Soon, it will emerge. And when it does, you will understand why we chose to stay. Why we chose to sacrifice our lives, our souls, to keep it imprisoned. You will understand, and you will wish we had succeeded." Then she turned and walked back into the darkness, back down into the catacombs. The singing stopped. The cold dissipated. The crew fled, taking their footage with them. The television special never aired. The network suppressed it. But copies of the footage exist, and those who've seen it confirm the nun was real. She was there. She spoke, and her warning was genuine. After the 1994 incident, the church took action. They brought in an exorcist, Father Marcus DeSanto, a veteran of dozens of spiritual combat situations. He arrived at St. Mary's with holy water, sacred relics, and an absolute conviction that whatever haunted the convent could be banished through faith and prayer. Father DeSanto spent 3 days at St. Mary's. He blessed every room, performed exorcism rites in the chapel, descended into the catacombs to confront whatever dwelt there. On the 4th day, he emerged changed, broken, his faith shattered. He told his superiors, "What's beneath St. Mary's isn't a demon. Demons I can fight. Demons I understand. This is something else, something that exists outside God's creation, something that was here before God spoke light into darkness." The nuns didn't vanish. They went down willingly. They became a living seal, their prayers the chains holding it in place. And those chains are weakening. Father DeSanto was defrocked shortly after, not for failure, but for what he said next. The church should help them, should send more priests, more nuns, more willing souls to strengthen the seal. But we won't. We'll pretend it's not happening. Pretend the nuns are just missing. Because if we acknowledge what's really down there, we'd have to acknowledge that our theology is incomplete, that there are things older and darker than our devil. And we can't face that truth. Father DeSanto died in 2001. His final words, recorded by hospital staff, were, "I can hear them singing. The nuns, they're calling me. They need help. They need someone to join the vigil. I should go. I should." He died mid-sentence, his hand outstretched toward the west, toward Pennsylvania, toward St. Mary's. Witness account from the 2000s paint a disturbing picture of escalation. The phenomena at St. Mary's are no longer confined to the convent itself. They're spreading, affecting the surrounding countryside, reaching out like tendrils from some vast underground intelligence. In 2003, every resident of Millbrook reported the same dream on the same night. They dreamed of standing in the chapel of St. Mary's, watching as 37 nuns descended into the catacombs one by one. In the dream, they could see what the nuns saw, a vast chamber far below, and in that chamber something. Not quite visible, not quite comprehensible, a presence so alien, so wrong, that even dream logic couldn't fully render it. Just an impression of size, of hunger, of patient, eternal malevolence. And in the dream, the nuns formed a circle around this thing. They began to pray, and as they prayed, their bodies began to glow, to become translucent, to merge with the stone around them. They were sealing themselves into the rock, becoming part of the prison, using their own souls as locks. And the thing in the center raged silently, bound by their sacrifice, unable to break free as long as the nuns maintained their prayer. But the prayer was weakening. After 50 years, the spiritual energy was depleting. And when it failed completely, the thing would be free. Millbrook's residents woke in terror, many of them weeping, all of them knowing they'd seen truth rather than mere nightmare. A team of geologists surveying the area in 2007 detected unusual seismic activity centered on St. Mary's. Not earthquakes exactly, but rhythmic pulses emanating from deep underground. The pulses occurred every 3.7 seconds, the exact length of a human heartbeat. But the source was hundreds of feet below the surface, in a chamber that shouldn't exist according to all geological surveys. When the geologists tried to investigate, their equipment failed. Drill bits shattered. Ground-penetrating radar returned impossible readings, showing void spaces the size of cathedrals, showing masses that moved, showing what appeared to be 37 distinct human-shaped heat signatures standing in a circle. The lead geologist, Dr. Amanda Torres, ordered the investigation stopped. "We need to seal this area," she told county officials. "Whatever's down there, it's not natural, it's not safe, and it's getting ready to emerge." Her warnings were ignored. The county needed the survey completed for zoning purposes. Dr. Torres resigned rather than continue. In her exit interview, she said, "The nuns are still there. I saw them on the scans. Still standing, still holding formation, but they're fading. The heat signatures are weakening. Give it 5 years, maybe 10, and they'll fail. And when they do, Millbrook won't exist anymore. Nothing will exist within 50 miles. I don't know what that thing is, but I know it's hungry. And it's been hungry for a very, very long time." A group of urban explorers entered St. Mary's in 2012, live streaming their exploration to social media. Thousands watched as they toured the abandoned convent, making jokes, showing no respect. When they entered the chapel, the stream suddenly cut out. For 30 minutes, nothing. Then it reconnected. The explorers were running, screaming, fleeing the building. Later, when they'd calmed enough to speak, they described what happened. "We heard singing. Then we saw them. All of them. 37 nuns, standing in a circle in the chapel. They were transparent, glowing, and they were looking at us. All of them, staring. Then one step forward, I think it was the Mother Superior, and she pointed at us. And she said, 'Join us. We're so tired. We've held the vigil so long. Take our place. Let us rest.' And the floor, the floor started to crack, to open, and we could see down into the catacombs, into the deep chamber. And there was something down there, something looking up at us, something that wanted us. We ran. God, we ran. None of the explorers ever went back, but all of them reported the same recurring nightmare, standing in the circle with the nuns, praying, feeling their bodies merge with stone, feeling themselves become the seal, feeling the thing below pressing against their consciousness, patient and eternal, waiting for them to weaken, waiting for the chance to break free. St. Mary's of the Sorrows stands today in a state of advanced decay. The roof has partially collapsed. Walls are crumbling. Nature is slowly reclaiming the structure. The local authorities have given up trying to keep people out. Too expensive, too pointless. People enter despite the dangers, despite the warnings, despite the disappearances that still occur. In 2018, the most recent confirmed vanishing happened. A paranormal investigator named Michael Torres entered St. Mary's alone, equipped with cameras and determination to solve the mystery. His footage was recovered 3 days later, found on his abandoned equipment at the entrance to the catacombs. The footage shows Michael descending into the tunnels, reaching the deep chamber, and the footage shows what's there. Finally, after 60 years of speculation and fear, someone captured it on camera. The chamber is vast, cathedral-sized, carved from living rock. And in the center, barely visible in the darkness, is something, not quite physical, not quite spiritual, a presence that exists in the space between dimensions. It's huge, shapeless, constantly shifting, and it's aware, completely, terrifyingly aware. Around this thing, the nuns stand, or what's left of them. They're partially merged with the chamber walls, their bodies transforming into stone, but their faces remain visible. 37 faces frozen in expressions of determination and agony. And they're praying, still praying, their lips moving in constant prayer, maintaining the seal through sheer force of will and sacrifice. The footage shows Michael approaching the circle. One of the nuns, her nameplate identifies her as Sister Catherine, turns her head, looks at him, speaks. You should not have come. You should not see this. But now that you're here, will you help us? Will you join the circle? We're so few, so weak. It's breaking through. Please, help us hold it back. Michael's response is captured on audio. What is it? What are you holding? Sister Catherine's reply is the last thing heard on the recording. It has no name. It existed before names, before language, before life. The indigenous people sealed it here 10,000 years ago. We're just the latest wardens, the latest sacrifice, and you're next. You have to be next, because we're failing. And when we fail, it will rise. It will consume. It will spread until the world is as dead and empty as the void it came from. The footage ends there. Michael Torres was never found. But 2 weeks later, a note appeared at Millbrook police station. Handwritten, it said, "I have joined the vigil. I understand now. We need more. We always need more. The seal requires sacrifice, requires willing souls. If anyone reads this, come to St. Mary's. Come and help us. Before it's too late, before we fail, before it escapes." Michael Torres, 38th Guardian. The local priest who received the note recognized Michael's handwriting. But Michael couldn't have written it. Michael was missing, unless he'd somehow returned from wherever the nuns were. Unless he'd come back from that chamber long enough to deliver a message. A plea for help. Sister Margaret, the sole survivor of the original 37, died in 2019 at age 93. On her deathbed, she gave one final interview. "I should have stayed," she whispered. "Mother Agatha sent me away to save me, but I should have stayed. Should have joined the circle. They're still there. Still holding it back. Still sacrificing themselves. And every year they get weaker. Every year it gets closer to breaking free. Someone has to help them. Someone has to join the vigil. Because if the seal breaks..." She died before finishing the sentence. St. Mary's of the Sorrows remains standing. The convent is a shell. But beneath it, in the deep chamber, the vigil continues. 37 nuns plus however many have joined them since. Michael Torres, David Holt, others who vanished, they stand in their circle. They pray their endless prayers. They hold a seal against something that should never be released. And that seal is failing. Local seismologists report increasing activity. The pulses from below are growing stronger, more frequent. The thing is testing its prison, pushing, probing, waiting for the moment when the prayers finally cease, when the last guardian falls, when the seal breaks and it can finally emerge into a world it was banished from millennia ago. The nuns sing. If you stand outside St. Mary's at 3 a.m., the hour of vigils, you can hear them. Dozens of voices, hundreds of voices, all the souls who've joined the vigil across 60 years. They sing in Latin. They sing in languages older than Latin. They sing prayers to gods that died before humanity learned to write. They sing to hold back the darkness, to keep the world safe, to maintain their eternal, terrible sacrifice. But they're tired, so tired, and they're calling for help, calling for volunteers, calling for anyone brave enough or foolish enough to join them in the deep chamber, to become part of the seal, to sacrifice themselves for humanity's survival. Will you answer? So we must ask, what would you sacrifice to save the world? Would you give your life, your soul, your eternity? Beneath St. Mary's of the Sorrows, 37 nuns answer that question. They chose sacrifice, chose to become living seals against something ancient and terrible. And they're still there, still holding, still waiting for the help that will never come. The vanished nuns didn't leave. They stayed. They're still at St. Mary's, in the deep chamber, maintaining a vigil that has lasted 60 years, holding back something that would consume the world if freed. And every day, they grow weaker. Every day, the thing below grows stronger. Every day, the seal comes closer to failing. The authorities ignore it. The church pretends it's not happening. The world goes on, unaware that beneath a crumbling convent in Pennsylvania, a handful of determined souls are all that stand between humanity and something that should never see the light of day again. But ignorance won't save us. Denial won't protect us. When the seal finally breaks, and it will break, we'll understand what the nuns sacrificed themselves to prevent. Would you enter St. Mary's of the Sorrows? Would you descend into the catacombs? Would you stand in that circle of praying guardians and add your voice to theirs? Would you become the next sacrifice to hold back the darkness? If you enjoyed this terrifying journey into the unknown, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Join us again, only on STF Horror Vault.